I walked into my parents' anniversary celebration wearing the black designer dress I had saved for 3 months to buy. The restaurant glittered with crystal and silver, exactly the elegant backdrop I had pictured for reconnecting with my family. At 32 years old, my demanding career as a marketing director meant I missed too many family gatherings. My mother intercepted me before I could greet everyone, her fingers digging slightly into my arm. "Honey, we're tight on seating at the main table. Would you mind sitting at the kids' table, just for tonight?" Behind her, I spotted my younger married siblings all comfortably seated with their spouses at the main table. My heart plummeted into my stomach. When my mother called to invite me to their 40th anniversary dinner 2 weeks earlier, I had been genuinely excited. "We'd love you to join us at the Bellamy," she said, mentioning one of the most exclusive restaurants in the city. "Everyone will be there." "Of course I'll come," I replied immediately, thinking about reshuffling my calendar. I wouldn't miss it. I was the middle child in a family of 5 children. My older brother Andrew was 40, married to Tina with 3 children. My older sister Stephanie was 37, married to Greg with 2 children. Then there was me, Rebecca, 32, and single. After me came my brother Jack, 30, recently married to Heather, and my youngest sister Natalie, 28, married to David with a baby on the way. Being the only unmarried sibling sometimes felt like having a flashing neon sign above my head at family gatherings. It wasn't that I opposed marriage. I'd had serious relationships, including a 2-year relationship with Daniel that ended 8 months ago, when he gave me an ultimatum about my career. He couldn't understand why I worked 60-hour weeks and traveled frequently. "It's like you're married to that job," he had said during our final argument. What Daniel and sometimes my family failed to understand was that I loved my work. I had fought hard to become the youngest marketing director in my company's history. Every promotion felt like validation that I had made the right choice investing in my career. The invitation to my parents' anniversary dinner came during a particularly crucial time at work. We were pitching to land the biggest account in the company's history, and as project lead, I was expected to be available around the clock. Still, family was family. I spoke with my boss and rescheduled an important client meeting, potentially jeopardizing my chances at the promotion I'd been working toward. Once I committed to attending, I wanted to make it special. I remembered my father once mentioning a rare vintage wine he had tasted decades ago at a business dinner. "Never had anything like it," since he had said wistfully. After extensive research and calling in a favor from a client in the wine industry, I located a bottle. The price made me wince, but I reasoned that 40 years of marriage deserved something extraordinary. Then there was the matter of what to wear. Most of my wardrobe consisted of business attire, practical, but not celebratory. I wanted something that would show my family I was thriving, not just surviving. The black designer dress I eventually chose cost 2 months of savings, but the confidence it gave me seemed worth every penny. I arrived at the Bellamy 30 minutes early, hoping to help with any last-minute arrangements. The maître directed me to our private dining room where my mother was speaking with the staff. "The place settings at the main table are for the adults," she was saying, "and we'll need the children's seating arranged by age." I hung back, not wanting to interrupt, when I noticed the staff beginning to arrange place cards. Curious, I walked closer once my mother stepped away. There at the main rectangular table were cards for my parents, all my siblings and their spouses. At a smaller round table in the corner were cards for my nieces and nephews, ranging in age from 3 to 12. And there among the children's cards was one that read, Rebecca. I picked it up, certain there had been a mistake. I turned to find my mother watching me. "Mom, there seems to be a mix-up with the seating," I said, holding up my card. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "No mix-up, dear. We're just short on space at the main table, and since everyone else is coming with their spouses." I felt as though I'd been slapped. "You're seating me with the children. I'm 32 years old." "It's not a big deal, Rebecca. It's just for one night, and someone needs to keep an eye on the little ones. You're always so good with them." She patted my arm. "Besides, the tables are close together. You'll still be part of everything." I stood frozen, the place card still in my hand, as family members began to arrive. My younger brother Jack entered with his wife Heather, both immediately ushered to prime seats at the main table. He caught my eye and gave a small shrug that might have been apologetic or dismissive, I couldn't tell. Aunt Rebecca. My niece Lily Andrews' 8-year-old came bounding over. "Are you sitting with us? That's so cool." I forced a smile. "Looks that way, sweetie. Mom says we get pizza, and the grown-ups get boring food," she confided. The grown-ups. The distinction stung more than I wanted to admit. My older sister Stephanie arrived next with her husband Greg. She air-kissed my cheek. "Love the dress, Becca." "Designer." "Yes," I said. "Special occasion and all." Her eyes flicked to the kids' table, then back to me. An awkward silence fell between us. "Well," she finally said, "I should go say hi to Mom and Dad." By 7 o'clock, everyone had arrived. The contrast between the two tables was stark. The main table gleamed with fine china crystal wine glasses and silver cutlery. Candles created a warm glow over the white linen tablecloth. Our table, in comparison, had colorful plastic cups, regular stoneware plates, and paper napkins with cartoon characters. "Rebecca, would you make sure the kids wash their hands before dinner?" my mother called from her seat of honor. I herded my nieces and nephews to the restrooms, helping the youngest with soap, and checking that no one simply waved their hands under the faucet for 2 seconds. When we returned, appetizers were being served at the main table. "When do we get food?" complained my nephew Tyler. Soon, I assured him, though no server had approached our table yet. I watched my family laughing and clinking glasses. My father stood to make a toast, and everyone at the main table raised their crystal flutes of champagne. "To 40 amazing years with the most wonderful woman in the world," he said, smiling at my mother. "And to our beautiful family. I'm so proud of each of our children and the families they've created." I reached for my water glass, the only drink at our table, feeling the exclusion acutely. My brother Jack caught my eye again. "Except for Becca," he called out with a smirk. "She's still holding out for Miss Career of the Year instead of starting a family." Everyone laughed as though he'd made a harmless joke. I forced myself to smile while something twisted painfully in my chest. Dinner progressed, with the adults receiving elegantly plated gourmet dishes while our table was served pizza and chicken fingers. The conversation at the main table revolved around homes, children, and vacation plans. Several times I tried to join in, raising my voice slightly from my distant position. "Work is going well, actually. We're about to pitch for the Henderson account," I offered during a brief lull. My father nodded distractedly. "That's nice, honey." The conversation immediately shifted to Andrew's recent promotion, which warranted a solid 5 minutes of discussion. As dessert was being served, I overheard my mother speaking to her friend Susan, who had stopped by the restaurant to drop off a gift. "No, she's still focusing on that job of hers," my mother said, in a low voice that carried just far enough for me to hear. "No husband prospects yet, which is why we had to seat her with the children." My cheeks burned as I pretended to be absorbed in helping my 5-year-old niece with her ice cream. Susan glanced over at me with what looked like pity before responding to my mother. "Such a shame. She's not getting any younger, you know." I excused myself to the restroom, locking myself in a stall until I could breathe normally again. When I returned, my 6-year-old nephew Danny looked up at me with innocent curiosity. "Aunt Becky, why aren't you grown up enough for the big table?" Danny's innocent question hung in the air between us. The other children at the table looked up, suddenly interested in my answer. I took a deep breath. "Sometimes Danny adults have different ideas about what makes someone grown up," I said carefully. "Some people think you need to be married to be a real grown-up." "That's silly," declared 10-year-old Lily. "My teacher, Miss Johnson, isn't married, and she's super grown-up. She even owns her own house and has a cat." I smiled genuinely this time. "Miss Johnson sounds very wise." "Do you have a cat?" asked Tyler Andrews' 7-year-old. "No, but I've been thinking about getting one," I replied, realizing as I said it that it was true. My apartment building had recently started allowing pets, and the idea of having a companion when I returned from business trips was appealing. "You should get 2 cats," advised Lily seriously. Then they won't be lonely when you're at work. For the next 15 minutes, I found myself engaged in the most genuine conversation I'd had since arriving. The children wanted to know about my job, my apartment, and why I traveled so much. They listened with real interest, asking follow-up questions that showed they were actually paying attention. "Do you get to make commercials?" asked Danny wide-eyed. "Sometimes I help decide what goes in them," I explained. "That's way cooler than Daddy's job," he whispered. "He just looks at numbers all day." From the main table, laughter erupted as my father stood to make another speech. I watched as he raised his glass, his face flushed with happiness and good wine. "I want to say a few words about what each of our children has contributed to our family legacy," he began. "Andrew, our firstborn, who's given us 3 beautiful grandchildren and made us proud with his work ethic and family values." Andrew beamed as everyone applauded. "Stephanie, who balances motherhood and her volunteer work so gracefully and has created such a beautiful home." More applause. I felt my stomach tightening. "Jack, who followed in my footsteps at the firm, and with his lovely new bride, has already bought a house in our neighborhood, so the family tradition can continue." Jack raised his glass in acknowledgement. "And our baby Natalie, who's about to make us grandparents again. Nothing makes a father prouder than seeing his children embrace family traditions and values." I waited, wondering if I'd been forgotten completely, when he added almost as an afterthought, "And Rebecca is doing well with her little career." Little career. The words echoed in my head as polite, perfunctory applause followed. 5 years of 60-hour weeks international business travel and climbing the corporate ladder reduced to a little career. I excused myself from the kids' table, retrieving the gift-wrapped wine from where I'd stored it near the coat room. Taking a deep breath, I approached my parents during a lull in the festivities. "Mom, Dad, I wanted to give you this." "Happy anniversary," I said, extending the carefully wrapped bottle. My mother took it with a smile. "How thoughtful, dear. We'll open this another time when we're celebrating something really special." Something really special. Not their anniversary. Not tonight. My gift, like my presence, was secondary. I was about to return to the kids' table when I noticed someone familiar entering the private dining room. My heart nearly stopped. Daniel, my ex-boyfriend, was being greeted enthusiastically by my mother. "You made it!" she exclaimed, hugging him. "I'm so glad you could come." Daniel caught my eye across the room, giving me a small, almost apologetic smile. I turned to my father, who was standing nearby. "You invited Daniel?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Your mother thought it would be a nice surprise," he replied. "You two were so good together, Becca." He's settled down now, working reasonable hours at his father's firm. "Maybe you could reconsider your priorities, too." I looked from my father to Daniel, to the kids' table where my place card sat among the children's. Everything suddenly became crystal clear. This wasn't just about seating arrangements. This was about my entire family's view of me as somehow incomplete, unfinished, not fully adult because I had chosen a different path. In that moment, I made a decision. There would be no scene, no dramatic confrontation that would only reinforce their view of me as emotional and immature. Instead, I would simply remove myself from a situation where I wasn't truly valued. I returned to the kids' table, one last time. "I have to go now," I told them quietly. "But there's still cake coming," protested Lily. "I know, and I'm sorry to miss it. But I just remembered something important I need to do." I gave each of them a quick hug. "Be good, okay?" Tyler, always the observant one, studied my face. "Are you sad, Aunt Becky?" "A little," I admitted. "But I'll be okay." I gathered my purse and the gift-wrapped wine my mother had handed back to me. Everyone at the main table was engaged with Daniel, now exclaiming over how well he looked and asking about his new position at his father's company. No one noticed as I slipped out of the private dining room and through the main restaurant. Outside, the night air was cool against my flushed skin. I got into my car but didn't start it immediately. Instead, I sat in the dark parking lot, trying to process everything that had happened. The seating arrangement, my father's speech, Daniel's appearance. After a few minutes, I started the car and drove to Lookout Point, a scenic overlook of the city that had always helped me think clearly. The lights of downtown sparkled below, like a reflection of the stars above. I turned off my phone, not ready to deal with any messages or calls. Sitting on a bench overlooking the city, I finally allowed myself to feel the full weight of the evening's humiliation. Tears came, but they weren't just tears of hurt. There was anger too, and underneath it all, a strange sense of liberation. For years I had been trying to prove my worth to my family, while simultaneously building my career. I had bent over backwards to attend family functions when I could brought thoughtful gifts, listened to endless stories about my siblings' children and marriages, all while feeling that my own life choices were seen as temporary, a placeholder, until I got serious and settled down. But tonight had clarified something important. Their approval wasn't worth the cost to my self-respect. I didn't need to make myself smaller to fit into their narrow definition of success. I thought about my team at work who respected my leadership and valued my contributions. I thought about my friends, many of them career-focused like me, who understood the satisfaction that came from professional achievement. I even thought about my mentor Sandra, who had built an impressive career while remaining single by choice, and who had never once made me feel that my path was less valid than anyone else's. By the time I left Lookout Point 2 hours later, I had the beginnings of a plan. Not a plan for winning my family's approval, but for setting boundaries that would protect my dignity and self-worth. I drove home to my downtown apartment, the bottle of expensive wine beside me on the passenger seat. The wine my parents hadn't considered special enough to open at their anniversary. Well, perhaps I'd find a more appreciative recipient. Once home, I went through my evening routine, deliberately focusing on self-care. A long bath, comfortable pajamas, a cup of tea. I set my phone on my nightstand without turning it back on. Whatever messages awaited could wait until morning, or perhaps longer. I slept better than I expected, and woke up the next day with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. It was Saturday, and I had the weekend to myself. I made coffee, tidied my apartment, and worked on a presentation for the Henderson pitch, still not turning on my phone. Around noon, my doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, but when I checked the peephole, I saw a delivery person with a large bouquet of flowers. I signed for them and brought them inside, opening the small card tucked among the lilies and roses. Sorry you weren't feeling well and had to leave early. Hope you're feeling better. Love, Stephanie and Greg. I stared at the card in disbelief. Feeling unwell, is that what they thought? Or what they were telling themselves? Had no one even noticed I'd left until dessert was served? An hour later, another delivery arrived. This time, it was an edible arrangement from Andrew and Tina, with a nearly identical message. By the end of the day, I had received deliveries from Jack and Natalie as well, all expressing concern for my supposed illness. Not one of them had tried to call or text, assuming my sudden departure could only be explained by physical sickness rather than emotional injury. It was as if they couldn't conceive that I might have been hurt by their treatment. Or perhaps they simply found it easier to create an alternate narrative. I decided to leave my phone off for another day. Sunday passed peacefully. I finished my presentation, went for a run along the riverfront, and called my assistant to let her know I'd be taking Monday and Tuesday as personal days. I hadn't taken time off for anything other than work travel in over 8 months, and the sudden decision to do so felt both rebellious and necessary. "Is everything okay?" Lisa asked, concern evident in her voice. "Yes," I replied, realizing that for the first time in a while, I actually meant it. "I just need some time to reset." "Good for you," she said. "The Henderson files are ready whenever you get back." On Monday morning, I made an appointment with Dr. Marshall, the therapist I had seen briefly after my breakup with Daniel. I hadn't felt the need to continue sessions at the time, but now I recognized that the issues with my family deserved professional perspective. "Tell me what happened," Dr. Marshall said, after we'd settled into her comfortable office. I recounted the events of the anniversary dinner, trying to stick to facts rather than emotions. "And how did that make you feel?" she asked when I finished. "Humiliated, angry, but mostly sad," I admitted. Sad that after all these years they still can't see me as a complete person without a husband. That all my hard work and success means nothing compared to being someone's wife. Do you think that's true? She asked. That your accomplishments mean nothing to them? I paused, considering. Not nothing, just less. Like my life is somehow on hold until I fulfill their expectations. My father called it my little career, as if I'm just playing at being an executive. We spent the next hour unpacking patterns in my family dynamics that went back to childhood. How my parents had always emphasized different achievements for their sons and daughters. How married siblings got larger Christmas and birthday gifts because they were starting families. How conversation at family gatherings inevitably turned to when I would settle down. What would it look like, Dr. Marshall asked near the end of our session, if you stopped seeking their validation? The question struck me with unexpected force. I'm not sure I know how to do that, I admitted. They're my family. Yes, but that doesn't mean their approval should come at the cost of your authentic self. What if you decided that your own approval was enough? I left with homework to write down 5 things I valued about myself that had nothing to do with my family's opinion, and to draft boundaries for future family interactions that would preserve my dignity. That evening, I finally turned my phone back on. It immediately began buzzing with notifications. 28 missed calls, 43 text messages, 17 voicemails, and dozens of social media notifications. The earliest messages from Sunday morning were casual. How are you feeling and sorry you got sick? By Sunday afternoon, they had escalated to, why aren't you answering your phone and getting worried about you? Sunday evening brought increasingly frantic messages. Rebecca, this isn't funny anymore. Call someone. Monday's messages were alarming. We've called your office, and they said you're not coming in. Dad is talking about filing a missing person report. Mom is freaking out. Call home now. I scrolled through the texts, noting the escalating panic, when one from my father caught my eye. Rebecca, please call home immediately. We need to discuss the wine you took. The wine. They were worried about the wine. I played the most recent voicemail from my mother. Rebecca Elizabeth, this has gone far enough. Your father has been calling hospitals all day. We contacted your workplace and they said you've taken time off. If this is about the seating arrangement at dinner, you're being childish. And that wine you took was apparently quite valuable. Your father is very upset. Call us immediately. So, that was it. They hadn't started panicking because they were concerned about my feelings. They were worried about the wine I had taken with me when I left. The wine they had rejected as not special enough to open at their anniversary. I set the phone down, not ready to respond to any of them yet. Part of me wanted to call immediately and set them straight, but another part, the part that was learning to value my own well-being, knew I needed more time to process everything. Tuesday morning, I met with a real estate agent to discuss putting my apartment on the market. It was something I'd been considering for months, with the Henderson account potentially bringing a significant bonus. The downtown housing market was hot, and my agent thought I could get well above asking price. I can list it next week if you're ready, she said. Let's do it, I decided. It felt good to be taking concrete action toward my own goals, rather than trying to conform to someone else's expectations. I spent the rest of Tuesday visiting condos in an upscale neighborhood near my office. One in particular, a corner unit on the 12th floor with floor-to-ceiling windows and a small balcony, seemed perfect. It was at the top of my budget, but within reach, if I got the promotion I was working toward. I'd like to make an offer, I told the agent. Are you sure? You've only seen 3 properties, she cautioned. I'm sure, I replied. This feels right. By Tuesday evening, my offer had been accepted contingent on the sale of my current apartment. I celebrated by opening the expensive wine I'd bought for my parents, pouring myself a single glass. It was excellent, complex, and nuanced. I considered saving the rest for a special occasion, then decided that taking charge of my life was occasion enough. I called my friend Allison and invited her over to share the bottle. To new beginnings I toasted when she arrived. What's the occasion, she asked. Just making some changes, I replied. Good ones. I was about to elaborate when my doorbell rang insistently. I checked the peephole to see my younger sister Natalie, standing in the hallway looking agitated. "Finally," Natalie exclaimed, when I opened the door. "Do you have any idea what you've put everyone through?" I stepped back to let her in, noting that she hadn't bothered to ask if I was okay. "Hello to you too, Natalie," I said calmly. "This is my friend Allison. Allison, my sister Natalie." Allison, sensing tension, stood up. "I should probably go." "No, stay," I said. "We were just catching up." Natalie's eyes fell on the open wine bottle. "Is that Dad's wine? The one you took?" "No, it's my wine," I corrected her. "The wine I purchased as a gift which Mom declined to open because apparently their anniversary wasn't special enough." Allison glanced between us. "I really should go. Call me later, Becca." She squeezed my arm supportively as she left. Once the door closed behind her, Natalie rounded on me. "What is wrong with you? You've had everyone worried sick. Mom's been crying, Dad's been calling hospitals. We thought you might be dead in a ditch somewhere." "I needed some time to myself," I said evenly. "So you couldn't answer a text. Let someone know you were alive, God, Rebecca. It's like you don't even care about this family." I took a deep breath. "Sit down, Natalie. I'm not staying. Mom and Dad are waiting in the car. They want you to come over right now and explain yourself." "No," I said firmly. "I'm not going anywhere tonight. If they want to talk, they can come up here." Natalie looked shocked. I had never refused a direct summons from our parents before. "They're really upset, Becca." "So am I," I replied. "Have they considered that? Have you? Or were you all too busy assuming I was being childish about the seating arrangement?" Her expression faltered. "So, this is about the kids' table. Seriously, you disappeared for 3 days because you had to sit with the kids." "I disappeared for 3 days because I needed time to think. About a lot of things. About being seated with children at 32 years old while my younger siblings sat with the adults. About Dad calling my executive position a little career. About Mom and Dad ambushing me with my ex-boyfriend without any consideration for my feelings." My voice remained steady despite the emotions churning inside me. Natalie sank onto my couch, some of her indignation fading. "I didn't know about Daniel showing up. That was pretty messed up." "Yes, it was," I agreed. "Just like it's messed up that everyone assumed I left because I was sick, not because I was hurt and humiliated." "The kids said you told them you had something important to do," she said defensively. "Because I didn't want to upset them by saying I was leaving a family event because my family doesn't respect me or my life choices." Natalie was quiet for a moment. "I never thought about it that way," she finally admitted. "I mean, it's just always been this thing about you being the independent one, the career-focused one. And has it occurred to you or anyone else in the family that being independent and career-focused isn't a character flaw? That it might actually be something to respect rather than something to fix?" "I do respect it," Natalie said quietly. "Sometimes I even envy it." I stared at her. "What?" She looked down at her hands. "Don't get me wrong. I love David, and I'm excited about the baby. But sometimes I wish I'd had the chance to do something for myself first. To prove that I could succeed on my own terms." This was unexpected. Natalie had always seemed perfectly content with following our parents' traditional path. "But you always acted like your life was exactly what you wanted, because that's what everyone expected," she sighed. "Mom and Dad made it clear that getting married and starting a family was the goal. I never felt like I had much choice." My phone buzzed with a text. Natalie glanced at it. "That's probably Mom wondering what's taking so long. They're going to come up if I don't bring you down." "Let them," I said, feeling oddly calm. Sure enough, 5 minutes later there was another insistent knock at my door. I opened it to find both my parents standing there, looking simultaneously angry and relieved. Rebecca Elizabeth, my mother, began using my full name, as she always did when upset. "I can't believe you would put us through this kind of worry." "Barbara, please," my father said, placing a hand on her arm. "Let's not start with accusations. He turned to me. We were concerned when you didn't answer your phone, sweetheart. I needed some space, I replied, stepping back to let them enter. My mother spotted the wine bottle immediately. Is that the Chateau Margaux? Do you have any idea how valuable that is? Your father spent hours tracking it down for a special occasion. I spent hours tracking it down. I corrected her. I called in a favor from a client in the wine industry to find it for your anniversary, which apparently wasn't special enough to open it. My mother had the grace to look slightly abashed, but quickly recovered. Well, regardless, you can't just disappear for days on end without telling anyone where you are. We're family. Exactly, I said. We're family. Which is why it hurts so much to be seated at the kids' table like I haven't earned my place among the adults. To hear Dad dismiss my career as if it's a hobby. To have you ambush me with my ex-boyfriend because you can't accept that my life doesn't look the way you think it should. We were just trying to help, my father protested. And the seating was just a practical matter. The married couples needed to sit together. Why, I challenged. Why is a married couple more deserving of dignity than your single daughter? Why is Jack's 6-month marriage more valuable than my 6 years of building a career? That's not fair, Rebecca, my mother said. We're very proud of what you've accomplished. But we worry about you being alone. I'm not alone, I replied. I have friends, colleagues, a full life. What you really mean is you're uncomfortable with me being unmarried. An uncomfortable silence fell. Have you ever considered, I continued more gently, that I might be happy with my choices, that my life might be fulfilling exactly as it is? But for how long, my mother asked. You're not getting any younger, Rebecca. What about children? If and when I want children, I'll have them. With or without a husband. But that's my decision to make, not yours. My father sat heavily on my couch. I don't understand this generation. In our day, family came first. My career doesn't mean family isn't important to me, I said, sitting beside him. But I need my family to respect my choices the way I respect yours. You think we don't respect you? He asked, genuinely surprised. Dad, you called it my little career? You invited my ex-boyfriend to your anniversary dinner without even asking me. You put me at the kids' table. What message do you think that sends? He was quiet for a long moment. I never thought of it that way, he finally admitted. My mother remained standing, arms crossed. This is all very dramatic, Rebecca. If you were upset, you could have said something at the time. Would you have listened? Or would you have told me I was overreacting? I asked. The way you're doing right now. She opened her mouth to protest, then closed it again. Mom Natalie spoke up from where she'd been silently watching. I think Becca has a point. We do treat her differently because she's single. That's ridiculous, my mother began, but Natalie cut her off. Remember, Christmas Becca got a sweater while Jack and Heather got that expensive coffee machine for their new home. And last Thanksgiving, when Andrew kept interrupting Becca's story about her promotion to talk about Tyler's soccer game, my mother looked flustered. That's different. Family news is important. Becca is family, Natalie insisted. Her news should be important too. I felt a rush of gratitude toward my sister. Thank you, Nat. My mother sat down heavily in an armchair. I never meant to make you feel less important, Rebecca. I just want what's best for you. I worry about you working so hard with nothing to show for it. Nothing to show for it, I repeated. Mom, I'm up for a promotion that would make me the youngest executive director in my company's history. I'm about to close on a new condo. I'm respected in my field. That's not nothing. A condo, my father perked up. You're buying real estate. Of course that would get his attention. My father had always believed in property investment. Yes, a corner unit in the Addison, I said. 12 floors up with a view of the river. The Addison. He looked impressed despite himself. That's a very good building. I know, I said. That's why I'm buying there. But how can you afford that on your own? My mother asked, genuinely curious. Because I'm good at what I do, Mom. Because my little career actually pays quite well. Because I've worked hard and saved carefully. She had the grace to look somewhat chagrined. I need to know something, I said. looking between my parents. When you realized I was missing, what worried you more, that something might have happened to me, or that I'd taken the wine? They exchanged a glance. That's not fair, Rebecca, my father protested. Isn't it? Because based on the messages I received, there seemed to be a lot of concern about that bottle. It's a very rare vintage, he mumbled. It is, I agreed, which is why I thought it would be a meaningful gift for your 40th anniversary. A gift you dismissed without a second thought. An uncomfortable silence fell. I've made mistakes, my mother finally admitted. We all have. But disappearing like that wasn't the answer, Rebecca. Maybe not, I conceded. But it gave me the space I needed to realize some important things about myself and about our family. And what did you realize? My father asked cautiously. That I've been seeking your approval at the expense of my own happiness. That I've let your definition of success overshadow my own. That needs to change. What are you saying? My mother asked, a note of alarm in her voice. I'm saying that I love you both, but I need you to accept me as I am, not as who you want me to be. The conversation with my parents and Natalie lasted late into the night. There were tears, raised voices, defensive postures, and finally tentative understanding. My mother admitted reluctantly at first, and then, with growing honesty, that she had always been somewhat jealous of my independence. I went straight from my parents' house to marriage, she confessed. I never had the chance to find out who I was on my own. My father acknowledged that his focus on traditional success markers had blinded him to the value of my different path. I just wanted you to be secure, he said. In my generation, that meant marriage. I am secure, Dad, I assured him. I've made sure of it. By the time they left, something had shifted between us. Nothing was fully resolved. Deep patterns rarely change in a single conversation, but a door had been opened. The next morning I returned to work with a newfound confidence. The Henderson pitch was scheduled for the following week, and I threw myself into preparations with renewed focus. I was good at my job, and it was time I fully owned that, without apologizing or downplaying my achievements to make others comfortable. Lisa, my assistant, noticed the change immediately. Something's different about you, she observed as I reviewed presentation materials with her. Just gained some perspective, I replied. The day of the Henderson pitch arrived, and our team delivered a flawless presentation. When the senior partner from Henderson shook my hand at the end and said, "We'd like to work exclusively with your team," I felt a surge of professional satisfaction unlike anything I'd experienced before. That weekend, I invited my siblings to my apartment for dinner. Not my parents, not yet. We needed more time to reset our relationship. But my brothers and sisters, I thought, might be ready for a new kind of honesty between us. To my surprise, they all came, even Andrew, who typically begged off any gathering that didn't include his children. "Nice place," Jack commented, looking around my apartment. "Thanks," I replied. "Though, I'll be moving soon. The condo purchase is going through." Mom mentioned that Stephanie said, "The Addison, right? That's impressive, Becca." We settled in the living room with glasses of wine, not the expensive bottle I'd shared with Allison, but a good vintage nonetheless. So I began. "I wanted to thank you for coming and to apologize for worrying everyone last weekend. You scared us," Andrew admitted. "But I think we're all realizing we owe you some apologies too." I looked at him in surprise. Andrew rarely admitted fault. "Natalie told us about your conversations," Stephanie explained. "About how we've treated you differently because you're single." At first I thought she was exaggerating, Jack added. But then I started thinking about it. About how we always ask about your dating life, but never about your work. How we act like your accomplishments are just filling time until you get married. "It wasn't intentional," Stephanie said quickly. "At least I never meant it that way." "I know," I assured her, but it hurt all the same. An uncomfortable silence fell. "The thing is," I continued, "I've realized that I've been complicit in it too. I've downplayed my achievements around all of you because I didn't want to seem like I was showing off or making anyone feel bad about their choices." "Why would your success make us feel bad?" Andrew asked. I took a deep breath. Because we're all trying to convince ourselves that our life choices are the right ones, and sometimes other people's different choices can make us question our own. Jack shifted uncomfortably. What do you mean? I mean that marriage and family are wonderful if that's what you truly want. But they aren't the only path to happiness. Just like career success isn't the only measure of worth. That's true in theory, Stephanie said. But in practice. In practice, it's complicated, I finished for her. Which is why I thought maybe we could try something new. A space where we can be honest with each other about the good and bad of our different choices. New judgment, new competition. You want us to talk about our problems. Andrew looked skeptical. I want us to talk about our lives. Real talk, not just the highlight reel we usually share at family gatherings. Natalie spoke up. I'll start. I'm terrified about having this baby. I love David, but our marriage isn't as perfect as everyone thinks. We fight about money all the time, and I'm worried about being financially dependent on him once the baby comes. Everyone stared at her in shock. See, this is why we don't do real talk, Jack muttered. No, this is exactly why we should, I countered. Natalie, have you talked to anyone about these concerns? She shook her head. How could I? Everyone expects me to be ecstatic about the baby, and I am most of the time, but I'm scared too. That seems completely normal to me, I said. I can relate, Stephanie offered hesitantly. After Tyler was born, I had pretty bad postpartum depression. I never told anyone except Greg because I felt like I was supposed to be this perfect, blissful mother. The conversation opened up from there tentatively at first, and then with growing candor. Jack admitted that he and Heather had rushed into marriage partly because of family pressure and were still figuring out if they were truly compatible. Andrew confessed that his perfect suburban life sometimes felt suffocating, and he envied my freedom to make decisions without consulting a committee. I love my family, he clarified, but sometimes I miss just being able to decide something on my own. By the end of the evening, we had agreed to make these honest conversations a regular thing. A monthly dinner rotating between our homes, where we could drop the pretenses and support each other without judgment. But what about Mom and Dad? Stephanie asked, as we were saying our goodbyes. They'll need to be part of this eventually, I acknowledged. But we need to establish this space first among ourselves. Then we can help them understand. The Henderson account came through the following week, and with it, the promotion I'd been working toward. Executive Director of Strategic Marketing, with a substantial salary increase, and a team of 15 reporting to me. When the announcement went out, the first congratulatory call I received was from my father. Your mother and I would like to have dinner with you this weekend, he said after congratulating me, to celebrate your promotion. We thought you might choose the restaurant. I suggested a new bistro downtown Neutral Territory, where we could continue rebuilding our relationship without the weight of family history. They arrived early, both looking slightly nervous. My mother had brought a small gift box which she presented somewhat self-consciously. Just a little something to mark the occasion, she said. Inside was a business card holder silver with my initials engraved on it. Not a generic gift, but something specifically chosen to acknowledge my professional identity. It's perfect, I said sincerely. Thank you. We're proud of you, Rebecca, my father said. I want you to know that. I may not have shown it well, but we are. That means a lot to me, I replied. I also owe you an apology, my mother added. For the wine, for the seating arrangement for Daniel. All of it. I was trying to push you toward what I thought would make you happy without considering that you might already be happy. I am happy, I confirmed. Not every minute of every day, of course. But I'm building a life that feels authentic to me. That's all any of us can really do. Over dinner, we talked more honestly than we had in years. They shared stories from their early marriage that I'd never heard before, including struggles and doubts they'd worked through. I told them about my new condo, my expanded team, and my vision for the future, which might or might not include marriage and children someday on my terms. We're having a family dinner at my place next month, I told them as we finished dessert. The new condo should be ready by then. I'd like you both to come. Of course we'll come, my mother said. What can I bring? Just yourselves, I replied, and an open mind. 2 weeks later, I closed on the condo and moved in with help from my siblings and a few close friends. The space was everything I'd hoped for, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city and river below. I furnished it carefully, creating a home that reflected my personality and achievements. For the promised family dinner, I had the dining table delivered early, a large round one with no head or foot, where everyone would sit as equals. I set the places myself, taking care that each setting was identical, adult, and elegant. In the center of the table, I placed a small crystal vase with a single perfect rose. My family arrived together, my parents, siblings, their spouses, and the children. I had hired a babysitter to watch the kids in the building's community room during dinner, with plans for them to join us for dessert. As everyone gathered around the table, my mother paused, taking in the seating arrangement. "It's a beautiful table, Rebecca," she said softly, "and I notice there's no kids' table tonight." "No," I agreed. "Not tonight." My father cleared his throat, raising his glass. "I'd like to propose a toast to Rebecca for bringing us together in her beautiful new home, and for teaching this old dog some new tricks about what family really means." Everyone raised their glasses. "And if I may add something," my mother said, her voice slightly wavering. "We've learned that family isn't about where you sit, but how you stand in life. And Rebecca, you stand tall and strong in a way that makes us very proud." As we clinked glasses, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. The journey hadn't been easy, and there would undoubtedly be setbacks and old patterns to overcome. But something fundamental had shifted. I had stopped seeking validation and started creating authentic connection. I had learned that true respect couldn't be demanded, only built through honesty and boundaries. Most importantly, I had discovered that self-worth wasn't determined by marital status or traditional choices, but by living with integrity and courage. That was a lesson worth all the pain it took to learn it. As the evening progressed into dessert, with the children joining us filled with laughter and genuine conversation, I looked around at my family gathered in my home on my terms. This was the beginning of a new chapter for all of us, one where different paths could be respected and celebrated. Have you ever had to stand up for your life choices when they didn't align with family expectations? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this journey resonated with you, please like this video, subscribe to hear more stories, and share with someone who might need to be reminded that their path is valid too. Thank you for listening to my story, and I wish you the courage to create boundaries that honor your authentic self.